China is escalating its Cold War against the United States. Chinese leader Xi Jinping is helping Vladimir Putin undertake Russia's largest military expansion since Soviet times. Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell. China is escalating its Cold War against the United States. It's announced that it's sanctioning General Atomics and General Dynamics, subsidiaries of the US military, for arming Taiwan. This is unprecedented, is what I would be saying if they hadn't already done the exact same thing for the exact same reason to Boeing Defense, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and Lockheed Martin. To be fair, sometimes I feel like sanctioning Lockheed Martin. The move bans senior executives of General Atomics and General Dynamics from visiting China and freezes their assets in the country. Is it too optimistic to hope that none of them have any? Neither company responded, but the U.S. State Department condemned the move and said that Taiwan's right to self-defense is legitimate. Beijing accused General Atomics and General Dynamics of seriously interfering in China's internal affairs and undermining China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Right, because interfering in the affairs of other countries and violating their territorial integrity can only be done by China. And wait just a second. Didn't the CCP also say that sanctions aren't very effective and condemn their usage? The CCP being hypocritical, I'm shocked I tell you. But sanctions aren't the only tool in China's Cold War arsenal. When the Chinese Communist Party isn't whining about sanctions or calling them ineffective or imposing their own on democratic countries, they're busy helping rogue regimes skirt them by, say, supporting Russia in a massive military expansion. The U.S. released intelligence reports revealing that Chinese leader Xi Jinping is helping his no-limits partner, Russian President Vladimir Putin, undertake Russia's largest military expansion since Soviet times. In particular, China is helping Moscow with space capabilities and the manufacture of drones and ballistic missiles. This is coming as the Kremlin is ramping up its attacks on Ukraine, and despite Western sanctions and heavy military losses for the Russians. But this information was released at a very convenient time, because German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is currently in China for a meeting with Xi Jinping, in which Chinese support for Russia will be a major topic of discussion. Washington is hoping that the release of this information is going to put pressure on Europe to put pressure on China. So basically, America finds out China's helping Russia with military production and decides that instead of acting to put a stop to it, it's just going to pass the job on to Europe. I thought we only outsourced our jobs to China. But we're not just outsourcing. President Biden just recently spoke on the phone with Xi about China's support for Russia. And Janet Yellen also warned of sanctions against Chinese banks that aid Russia during her recent trip there. So after China sanctioned American companies over Taiwan, and American officials gave Xi plenty of ample warnings about supporting Russia's war, why isn't the U.S. responding more directly, i.e. with its own sanctions on China? I'll tell you right after the break. Welcome back. China has long flouted U.S. and European warnings of sanctions should they assist Russia's military efforts in Ukraine. And the U.S. is getting sick of it. They're ready to take action by continuing to warn that it will hold China accountable if Russia gains in Ukraine. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Kirk Campbell, who has a long history of botching the job when it comes to China, said that America's priority is to maintain stability and security in Europe, and that any Chinese assistance to Vladimir Putin will have an impact on the U.S.-China relationship, and that we will not sit by and say everything is fine. Yep, they won't say everything is fine. They'll also say, please stop. This is just the latest in a series of warnings from the Biden administration that it will sanction the CCP if it helps Russia, which the CCP is already doing and has been doing for some time now. A dictator ignoring Biden's warnings? Gee, I wonder why that sounds familiar. Yeah, I don't think Xi Jinping's all that intimidated. China knows that its economy is going through a tough time, which is impacting the world economy. Sanctions imposed upon Beijing could hurt other countries, potentially directing their ire towards Washington, which is what China's been trying to accomplish for decades. It could also hurt the American economy. Because China's economy is already slowing and the world is suffering, the CCP is more vulnerable now to potential Western sanctions than ever before. But with post-pandemic supply chain issues still causing problems, so is the U.S. Now, China would undoubtedly be much more affected than the U.S. should sanctions be applied. But according to CNBC, such a step could also hurt the U.S., given the country's trade interdependence, and this consideration has prompted caution from Washington in the past. Of course, that's not to mention the great strides important U.S. and other Western corporations are making in wooing Xi and pressuring their governments not to act too rashly against China. Additionally, China is already preparing for how to deal with potential Western sanctions should it go forward with invading Taiwan. These steps include dividing the G7 countries to make sanctions less effective, and finding alternatives to the dollar-based financial system. BRICS, anyone? None of these steps are easy or quick to implement, though, and the CCP is notoriously incompetent, which is why China is sort of cooperating on Western sanctions on Russia, sometimes, when it feels like it, and isn't busy trying to skirt sanctions on Russia, or taxes by disguising copper as scrap metal. Small gestures coming out of China, along with Beijing's general incompetence, may make some U.S. officials feel better about delaying a sanctions process on China, because who cares about their regional aggression, ethnic genocide against Uyghurs, illegal occupation of Tibet, crackdown on Hong Kong, or general suppression of human rights? The U.S. shouldn't be getting too comfortable having Europe do their not-so-dirty work when it comes to isolating the CCP. North Korean officials are ramping up their high-level meetings with the Chinese and Russian governments. Just like Iran, North Korea has been a crucial supplier of military aid to Russia. And with Iran's recent attack on Israel, it kind of feels like all these countries are coordinating against the free world. Clearly, the U.S. needs to give some more stern warnings. Now, I've got a pretty scary video to show you. But first, China Uncensored would not be possible without your support. All it takes is $1 or more an episode on patreon.com/China Uncensored. I make about 16 episodes a month, but if that's too much for you, you can set a monthly limit, so you can ensure I can keep uncensoring China for even $1 a month. And as a thank you to everyone who gives on Patreon, I'll respond to one of your comments at the end of these episodes. Today's comment comes from Anthony Moore. I found myself involuntarily unsubscribed from your channel. YouTube has done this before with other political channels. Yeah, people have been telling me that for years, Anthony. It's just one of the many ways that YouTube screws with the show. Fortunately, China Uncensored can't be held back, and we keep getting new subscribers. Unfortunately, this tactic YouTube is using is really hurting my other show, America Uncovered. We've lost over 1,000 subscribers over just the past month, and I don't know how many of those people even know they've been unsubscribed. On America Uncovered, I try my best to deliver nonpartisan coverage of important American current events. But I guess YouTube prefers a certain skew to things, so please, do me a favor and go over and subscribe to America Uncovered on YouTube. Help me beat the censorship. Thanks for your support, Anthony. You too can get the Patreon experience by clicking on that orange button, and in another one of my attempts to get around YouTube shenanigans, I'm talking about things YouTube considers too controversial by hiding them in gaming content. So click on this video about the game The Withering Rooms, but it's really about Epstein Island in Hollywood. Let me know what you think. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.